the foundation, the precedence. We flying flags in every city, global residence. And we killing off the masters. Ghetto slave driving bastards. We making hits faster than you could think. We're on the brink of revolution. All my indie music makers, here's your restitution. We got the game in a chokehold. Not paying the creators is a no-no. I got the smoke road for all the fam.
What's up, everybody? It's BATSHON, the CEO of BeatStars, and this is Pay the Creators podcast on BeatStars. Another great episode here in Amsterdam. We got the link up with, I'm gonna call him the king of chill. He doesn't know it. He doesn't, I mean, he's never been called that, but to me, he's the king of chill beats. He's a top 3, top 5 selling producer in the history of the internet. We're sitting today with an absolute legend, straight out of Liverpool, UK, my guy, GC Beats. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Abe. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Thanks for coming.
Doing pretty well.
We didn't get a round of applause or nothing, man. Welcome to the podcast.
That's more like it.
GC Beats, man, the king of chill. And also, I got another co-host. We had Lee on the other one. I got my guy, attorney Kyle, legal associate over at BeatStars, man, helping the people. It's been fun, man. Like coming out to ADE, it's been a pretty cool, experience, music experience, just taking in all the energy, all the creative energy. How has your experience been here so far?
It's been really good. Very fast paced. So I got here on the 17th, a couple of days ago. But already I've been to so many events, and it's actually my first time in ADE. I'm sure I'm going to be back next year. Hell
yeah, man. No, we appreciate you coming out, taking the time to sit down with us. I know you didn't have to do that in between, all the crazy raves you've been going to.
I don't know how many more of them I can take, to be honest. But,
it's dope, man. Man, so we spoke a little bit last week, and your journey and your story is just so amazing. Especially like some of the things that you had to do to like give up in terms of, to become this like full-time creator and do your thing. You had to sacrifice a lot, but would love to just have you just walk us through a little bit of your journey, kind of recap what we talked about last week. But, how did you get into music in the first place? What age did you start? Was there an instrument that you picked up? Like what was your first introduction into making music?
So as far back as I can remember, I was just a kid, maybe like 3-4 years old. And I remember my mom bought me this toy keyboard. So it's like smaller than some of the smallest MIDI controllers out there on the market today. I think it was about 15 keys. And at the time it was pretty good. You could, it had a lot of pre-built sounds in, octave control. You could record for a couple of seconds, which was huge at the time. But I just got messing around with that keyboard, and what I used to do was recreate the melodies of certain cartoons and films that I'd see on TV, and also songs from my brother's favorite CD collections, and played that back to him. So that was when I thought, maybe, well, actually, you wouldn't think I'd have a knack for music at that age. I didn't know anything then. I was just like playing on this little toy keyboard, but that's where it all started for me.
Yeah. That's dope, man. You were saying you were like recreating some cartoons and stuff. Do you remember like what was the first cartoon that you recreated? I
don't know. So in the UK we had this show or this channel called Cartoon Network.
Oh yeah, we got
so,
it.
Is that what you guys have? Yeah. So I don't know. Can't remember. Shows like, I don't know, Cow and Chicken, Tom and Jerry, just like all these classic cartoons that I grew up with. And so what I used to do was just recreate these the melodies of these opening themes, and that would be like, I don't know, quite cool to me.
Yeah, that's dope, man. Like during the early days of you like creating music, what would you think was like the biggest obstacle that you faced, throughout the whole journey? Like what do you think was the hardest part?
As in since I discovered music as a child, or now this?
Yeah, maybe like the early days of your like, as a creator.
I think first learning to play an instrument, like I didn't know what to do after, well, without any sort of formal music education. I didn't have any lessons as a kid, but I wanted to, it was hard to figure out what I wanted to play in terms of an instrument to get things started. So when I reached 12 years old, that was when I started taking drum lessons. And yeah, from there, drums it got a lot easier. Instrument. Yeah, I started learning how to play keys a couple of years after I got into production. But it was just figuring out that first step into what I would do after, getting that toy keyboard I was talking about.
Yeah.
I just want to know, like, when you were growing up, like, what were some of your influences? Like, because I was watching we're kind of around the same age, and I was watching like Tom and Jerry, and one of my favorites was Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Yeah.
And it used to scare me a lot.
Bro, that was a very trippy show. Like some of the concepts in that, like you wouldn't understand even as an adult, you wouldn't understand to this day.
I know, it was like, that was like a huge part of my childhood, and music was too, right? So like I wonder back then, like when you were that age, you were discovering like your love for music, what type of music was inspiring you? Like what was you listening to? What was in GC's like playlist back then?
Yeah, well, it was, remember I was talking about my brother's CD collection. So it was mainly albums from there. So I had this, I think, the Marshall Mathers EP. That was actually on cassette. But at the time I was listening to that. At a very young age, it was very explicit, and I was like, yo, this is kind of like heavy on the ears. Like he was like really, Eminem was really aggressive back in the day. But that's kind of like how I got into listening to the rap genre.
What would you say back then, your favorite outside of that album, what would you say your favorite album growing up as a child? What would that be? I know that's a hard question.
Yeah, I can't really remember, to be honest.
Or favorite song?
I used to listen to Blink-182. Yeah, that was playing on the radio a lot. I guess that was also my introduction into like pop rock, live music. Yeah.
I remember you telling me that you did mention like the Drake era, the Migos, the Chance the Rapper era as like inspirations, So you feel like, as a creator, does your inspiration stop? It doesn't like stop with, the folks that you used to listen to. Are you constantly like continuing to kind of mold your influences as music continues to grow?
Yes. Well, it's kind of weird because as a producer, you don't really have, I don't really have time to listen to any new music. I'm always focused on creating. So, as of late, I've not really discovered any new artists, but back then I'd used to go on SoundCloud and just look at all these like new independent artists, and that's when I would discover things that were outside, like songs and genres that were outside of the box, and that really inspired me.
Yeah, a lot of people come up to me and ask me, "Hey, you're in the music industry. Who's your favorite artist? Who's who you listening to the most?" And people don't believe me. The last 15 years, I've just been listening to beats on BeatStars. I get locked in and just kind of, there's just so much damn good music on the platform that I feel like if I'm going to listen to music, I'd be doing myself like a disservice if I'm not, listening to the community. Because what's crazy is I'll listen to stuff, and then 6 months later or like a year later, it becomes the mainstream sound. I remember when lo-fi didn't even have a name, those early days of lo-fi on BeatStars, same thing with a lot of like chill pop stuff that you do. Like you were doing that so many years before it became like a real YouTube phenomenon, you know what I mean? Or like, it's cool that you guys are actually like setting the trends. But I wanted to go back because we were talking about your educational journey, and I'd love to just have you just bring up a little bit about, you know, your educational path and where did that lead you into?
So I started off doing accounting and finance in university.
But I remember before then you said you were in the art school, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. So if it's related to music, then yeah, I attended the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts, and I did a diploma in popular music and sound tech. But prior to that, I just went through the whole formal education system, high school, college, and that was after that I did the diploma. But then I did a 180 and did something completely unrelated to music at university, and that was the accounting and finance bachelor's degree. So I guess that's where my education sort of ended. Yeah, that's my highest level of education that I had.
Yeah, so you went into a whole different field, than the music with your accounting and finance, and then you ended up, working in that field, right? Working in that while you were kind of making beats.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was working for Barclays, the Barclays Bank. I was actually doing the mortgages, but that was very short lived. During that time, I was making beats. I started making beats and uploading them to BeatStars. Yeah.
Talk us through that like pivotal moment, with you, like living between these two worlds of, corporate UK. I'll say corporate America. Corporate America's everywhere actually, but
they here now.
Yeah, but living in the corporate world and trying to figure out if that is going to be your career path, but in the back of your brain, you're just determined to be this musician that wouldn't accept. I just love to hear like the moment that led up to that pivotal moment for you to kind of stop working in that field and then just doing what you're doing full time.
Yeah. So like I say, my time at Barclays was very short lived. I was there for about 6 months.
That was quick.
Yeah, it was really quick. I hated the job. I hated the colleagues, and it was just I don't.
They gonna see this.
Huh?
They gonna see this.
I'll post the podcast to them. I'll let them know about the podcast. No, but
it's a cold world. It's a cold world.
It is. I didn't. When you go into this sort of environment and it's very bland and the office is all grey, you very quickly you find out it's not something that I want to do long term. But as I say, I was uploading beats to BeatStars at that during that year 2018. In the later half, I think around about December, that month I made in terms of income, I broke even. So like my beat sales, the income from that was the same, if not more, than what I was earning for my salary at Barclays. So that was when I thought, I'd take a chance.
Took off your apron and just
I just completely, drop out. Yeah, I'm out, kind of thing.
Yeah. You give them at least 2 weeks.
I did have to give them notice just for you know what the whole workplace etiquette is like. But if I had a choice, looking back now, if I knew, this is what I'd be like today, I probably should be like, see you later. I'm off. Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Like how liberating did that feel, man? To be like, shit, oh man, like people are investing in my music to the point where I can work from home, have the freedom, and just like, did you think it was going to be a long-term thing? Or you thought, I mean, that was pretty quick. Like that first month you made the equivalent of that, your salary, that's it. You were all in. Yeah. Did you just know inside that was going to be like a long-term thing for you?
Well, that's how I felt at that time. Exactly how I felt. So when I seen the numbers, I thought it's, like I said, I'm out. I've got to give this an opportunity, give myself an opportunity. But it was more kind of like the metrics and like doing the math in my head kind of thing. So like I said I was saying to Mike Trump, There's no, there was no business plan for me in terms of, you know, how I'm gonna go into beat making and sustain myself as well as a business. It was just, if I can sell X amount of beats per day, per month, for a whole year, then this is, you know, this is the potential for earnings. And yeah, that kind of like made me more confident in leaving my job.
No.
I guess my question also would be, I think about sometimes, like, I started off as a rapper and I had to kind of make the decision of stay a rapper or pursue like my profession in law. And I thought it was going to be a path where they split and went in a different direction. But fortunately, I started buying beats off of BeatStars as a rapper, right? And then my passions came back together. And I think a lot of like young creators don't always understand that it's a world where we can do both sometimes. You know, a lot of times people make you feel like you got to pick one or the other, when in the end, you kind of end up doing both. So maybe talk a little bit about like how you were able to mix your passion. Well, I wouldn't call it a passion, but your understanding and knowledge of like finance. And I know we talked about this the other day, but like your knowledge of finance with your skill of being a creator, and like, how do you think, you know, understanding finance has helped you, you know, not only, you know, grow your skill as a creator, but also just grow a business?
Yeah. Well, the majority of producers, including myself, are self-employed, and we run our own limited companies. So it was useful to have accounting and finance as a skill, and the knowledge from the degree that I did, in terms of having to, you know, do things like file taxes, or at least understand how the income is coming in and expenses going out. But it also made talking to my accountant a lot easier when it came to, you know, year-end taxes, and that really helped my beat business run a lot more smoothly.
Also too, to build off of that, right? When you say, like, we were talking about this the other night, but can you talk a little bit about like how you track just certain things? Like, if I'm a young creator and, you know, I want to make sure like I'm tracking, you know, things that are doing well, tracking my income, you know, for my business, you know, monitoring what's coming in. What are some tips, maybe finance tips or advice you would give them of the things that they should be tracking to know like how their business is going to do, or what's not good, or what people are gravitating to? Can you speak to that a little bit?
To be honest, I only use, so like when we make sales on PayPal and well, what used to be Stripe, I wouldn't really look at the data and kind of analyze it. I would just use it purely for, you know, doing the books and getting that across to my accountant. So yes, yeah, that's all I would do.
Did you ever, like, when you, a lot of, you know, just talking with Anyway Well and Yahor and talking about how, you know, all businesses take an investment, you know, to grow.
Yeah.
When you first started seeing those early, like, you know, signals of success with beat sales or just plays or YouTube views, and you start seeing, okay, there's some engagement happening. Looks like I'm garnering an audience. People are interested in my music. Did you like stop and think, okay, all right, if I'm going to take this thing seriously from a business perspective, I'm going to budget this much for this. I'm going to invest in this. Or did you always kind of just reinvest from your earnings, or did you invest, you know, initially to kind of, you know, build your business up prior to like the earnings reaching a certain amount?
That's so actually my mom helped invest into my business. So she bought me my first pair of monitors. I remember asking her for that because at the time I didn't have any money. And she was very kind as to say, you know, yes. And she bought me my first set of the monitors, the audio interface. The only thing I had was my laptop. But initially, it was a very small kind of, I guess, amount of capital needed to set up as a producer. But you know, it's that's the good thing about it. Like, you don't have to put so much money into getting set up, but results can be big if you put the work in and the hours in.
Yeah, for sure. Did you feel like early on you were, reinvesting a lot more than you were kind of like taking out as income for yourself to kind of keep building the business?
No, I was just focused on making beats on the daily. I didn't really spend that much money other than what I had borrowed off my mum. It was very simple. It was just,
you're one of the lucky ones. Yeah, you're one of the lucky ones. And I think we have to make it very clear, I think, to a lot of like younger creators that not everyone gets to just upload a beat and see success. There's different, let's be real, there's different levels to this shit. And I think the amount of work that you put into actually creating your own niche lane of music and sound helps you, differentiate yourself in a way where you're really like targeting marketing without really having to do targeting marketing, just letting your sound speak for itself. And I think a lot of producers get stuck with, like creating the trending sound, creating the trending sound. And you've carved out your own lane in a way, that doesn't really exist that much on BeatStars. And I'm still surprised, right? I'm still surprised. I mean, there's maybe a few producers that kind of are trying to not mimic, but kind of create complementary music to what you're making. But do you feel like, was that because you're saying you used to listen to Eminem, you used to listen to hardcore rap, and you didn't come out the gates that way though, in terms of like your own sound. Do you feel like, was that a strategy that you're like, okay, there's not a lot of folks creating in this lane, I'm going to attack this lane and see where it goes, in terms of like keyword strategy, in terms of just sound and genre?
Yeah.
Was that something that you initially, strategized with, or that just happened on accident?
No, it was totally unplanned. But I believe it was like a culmination of everything that I listened to as a kid. I was exposed to a lot of different genres, and a lot of the songs I still remember, going up to my teens as well. So that's had a lot. I believe that's had a lot to do in terms of inspiration. But when it comes to actually producing these beats, I didn't want to box myself in, and I like to I like to make beats as I go along. I don't have, everything needs to be a blank canvas. Every project, every session needs to be a blank canvas, and I just produce what comes to my mind on that particular day.
Yeah. I have another question. So you were talking about just your journey, right? And going from working in finance to, I got enough money, I can kind of transition full time and do music. But maybe talk a little bit about, to the young creators that's watching this, the value of having catalog, right? Like, what is the value to you of, what freedom does having catalog provide you? What advantages have, having that catalog like allowed you to do, differently in life? Maybe than some of your peers that were on a similar path or a different path. What has having ownership in a catalog like afforded you the ability to do?
When you say catalog, do you mean like just a beat catalog, or does that include kind of songs and that you have under your belt?
Well, we can start with the beat catalog, like just having a great catalog of beats that's constantly, kind of like real estate, right? Always working, always generating something for you.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was about to say. So it was actually you that said it. I seen on Instagram, like there was a post that you posted, or I think the BeatStars publishing account, and it was like every piece of music that you put out, or whether it's a beat or a song, is like a real estate, and from that you can get interest. It would be like kind of the publishing that you would be earning on it, but that's a very important part of being a producer or an artist, is making sure that you build your catalog consistently and to the best quality that it can be, so that you can kind of collect these the residual income that comes from it. You know.
And then to follow up on that, if I'm a young producer, and this situation comes up a lot, balancing having catalog versus having opportunities, right? So I know we work together on a deal, and it's like, I don't want to do that, right? Like,
yeah,
what's that balance of being a creator where you have this one thing and it's generating X amount of money, and then someone wants to buy that thing, but there's a difference in opinion of how much it's worth. How do you think about, that as a creator and like deciding, wait, I'm gonna keep this in my catalog and keep it making money, or, I'm gonna sell this because I know there may be a greater opportunity with this artist or artists like them?
Yeah. So when you reach the point where you've got to consider the opportunity cost of the decision that you're going to make, that's when you have to start doing some analyzing and thinking, would it be worth, selling this beat or whatever I've made for more upfront money, or would it be worth just keeping it for licensing? But sometimes it's not always about the money. If an artist goes, if you've made sales like previously on that beat, and you've made your money on that beat, but then someone comes along who's, pretty decent and they want the beat, and that can give you more exposure or publishing, then you got to think about that as well. So it really depends on what you want to do and who the other party is. Yeah.
So I'm going to try to read between the lines a little bit. Have you had to, turn down some like bigger labels that were trying to like acquire a beat from you, but you couldn't justify it because of how much recurring income from the non-exclusive licensing? Has that situation already happened in your career? Yeah.
There's been a couple times with independent labels wanted to buy this beat that they just found on YouTube. But I always realized that these beats have made a lot of sales before, and sometimes I wonder why they would even want to like purchase the
I don't think
exclusive.
they probably know, right? They probably don't know the historical context of like how much of that catalog beat is worth to you.
Yeah. So, but that's when kind of I ask people like Kyle, what should I do? Should I sell it exclusively, non-exclusively, and then go from there.
How many beats do you have in your catalog now?
Only like just a little over 350.
That's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
I've seen people do over like 1,000.
Yeah.
So it makes me feel like I need to put more work.
Yeah, I don't think so, man. I mean, we talk about quality over quantity all the time. Is your release schedule like how many beats a week do you drop?
Well, as of the last 2 years, I haven't really dropped much.
No.
No. I've been on a bit of a break for personal reasons. But when I was dropping music or uploading beats to YouTube and BeatStars, it would be about maybe 3-4 times a week at most.
Yeah. But you still have beats I still find in the charts. I still find them like all over the place.
Oh, really? I haven't been.
Yeah. I mean,
noticed.
there's some beats that like really like defy the norm. Like you have some beats that, that just are like anomalies, they last forever. And probably some of your top earning, income streams is just coming from, really few top hit beats, When you think about which one of those beats kind of like defy the norm, what are those beats? And can you tell a little bit of a story, any stories behind like the creation of some of those ones that are just anomaly kind of tracks that just keep going and going and going?
Yeah. I think I've got 3, I'd say my top 3 selling beats are, they're called Cream, Roses, and Berry.
Yeah.
So completely random names. Most of the time to do with food. I don't know why. Who knows why? But it's short and snappy, one syllable kind of thing. Sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, I was just saying, like those 3 beats. Basically, what's the story behind them? Did you know those 3? I mean, I hear Cream all the time. I hear Barry all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's still on rotation. Some of these beats have been out for years, and
they have.
They're still like probably some of your top income earners.
Yeah.
I don't think you're ever selling those beats exclusively to anybody.
It's too late. No, I wouldn't. It wouldn't be worth me selling, and it wouldn't be worth them having, based on how many times it's been licensed.
Yeah. Story behind them. Yeah. Tell me what.
Story behind. No, I remember making, because Roses, I made in like an hour at a coffee shop, but it ended up becoming quite popular. I think based on how simple it is, but also kind of how upbeat and happy it sounds. But then a beat like Cream, I spent like 4 days on.
Right.
So in FL, if you go to, I think, the project info, you can actually see the amount of time that you spent on a project. That's something crazy. Like
4 days.
Yeah, 4 days, 14 hours. I don't know. Yeah. Something crazy. Yeah.
When you see that kind of reaction, from just like one of those tracks, from artists all over the world, how does that make you feel?
I like it. Like, that's what I produce for. Like, I like it when I can see different takes from a lot of independent artists using this beat, which might not be the best thing, because I understand why people don't want to license the same beat, but that's what I like, to see different takes from different artists and how they interpret the beat themselves.
I have another like conspiracy theory on why your music does so well.
Okay.
So we live in this world, social media, news, instant kind of like flood of information that's available to us all the time. And 99% of the emotion and feeling that we're getting from the things that we're exposed from is dark and sad. And a lot of the music that comes out has those same undertones, because popular music makes music for how the population is feeling. And it's how people can kind of like instantly connect with someone going through something. But I feel like these social media platforms program us and condition us to only explore these type of like dark, sad, hopeless, helpless type of feelings that really sometimes eliminate our gratitude and just our thankfulness for life. And it also suppresses our ability to be happy and joyful and like remember what those feelings used to feel like, because we're just not exposed to them.
Yeah.
But when people listen to your music, which is the polar opposite feeling, emotion, then most of the music that's on BeatStars or the charts on Spotify or whatever it is, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like a breath of fresh air. And it's inspiring other people to like explore different feelings of gratitude and different feelings of thankfulness. You know what I mean? So my conspiracy is you're tapping into an inner feeling that people really, really want to feel, that when they're exposed to it, just like when we spend a whole day away from our devices and our phones, and we're just like having, real life conversations or real life moments with our family members. You're like, damn, wow. You just remember how precious, and you just remember how in the moment, like these moments feel and how important they are. Right. So I feel like, I don't know if, you're a psychology major or whatever it is, but I think you've accidentally tapped into an emotion for people to explore a more positive light in their life. And so they go to you for that. And because there's not a really large supply of that, because we're conditioned to make dark sounding music all the time, you're feeding an audience of people that are just seeking that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to add to that too, and just, give you your flowers while we're here. Is like, there are a lot of people that I notice like sell a lot like on the platform, and then there's also this other group too that's like they sell a lot on the platform, but they get like placements, right? And they get like sync, like people reaching out to them for sync. And just like what Abe said, it's like you're giving not only like consumers or music listeners or music lovers like a feeling, or artists that's buying your beats, but like labels are looking for that new thing. Music supervisors, I know we talked about, and we can touch on that a little bit later, but music supervisors are looking for something new, right? They want, when they're pushing out a commercial or they're pushing out a movie or a TV show or something, they want something that's unique for what they're trying to convey, but also for their audiences. Mm-hmm. And you do a really, really great job of that. And I think uniqueness is going to always continue to win. That's one of the themes that I've heard since we've been at, ADE, like that one, that if I just had to take away one word from this entire experience, it's just about being unique. And I think a lot of creators, like young creators, it's so easy to come into what you do and try to like be like someone else because they have a certain level of success, or everybody else wants to be like them. But just from my lawyerly eyes, the creators that I see winning, the ones that are doing the deals and getting things closed, and they're the unique ones. So I just want to let you know that.
Wow, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
means a lot.
Oh yeah, man. I'll go on BeatStars and just search happy or chill or just, on, and just while I'm working, and it'll be all GC beats. it'll be all GC beats.
I noticed more people are jumping on this whole
I think so.
sound.
Yeah.
And there's been people
I think
before
TikTok
me
has helped with that, right?
Yeah. But there's been people before me that have done these kind of happy and chill, lo-fi, just like positive vibes beats kind of thing.
I feel like Mantra was one of those guys, right? That had a lot of that.
He's always been doing the same thing that he's been doing. It's good.
No, it's great, man. And we need it. We need that balance. You know what I mean? We need that balance psychologically. We need the balance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We need that escape too sometimes. And we need artists being able to share some positive shit too. Like, you know what I mean? So they need to inspire them to make that kind of music. So keep doing that. There's not a lot of people doing it. So, that's going to always just differentiate you in the game,
Thanks, man.
But when you say, Kyle, when you're talking about like just unique, I think I made a mistake by saying unique, like in terms of that's what people need to be. It's not, I don't think it's about being fully unique. I think it's about, familiarity is good. Familiarity is good. Going back in time in different eras and different genres of music and capturing that, but doing it better. It's not about unique. It's about doing it better than what previous creators have done. Because people still need. We have that innate feeling like when we hear something familiar, like, oh shit, I remember that. I remember that feeling. I remember that. Oh, that sounds like this. It sounds like, but this sounds better. This sounds different. Yeah, it is different, but it's having that capacity to like understand what are the elements that people are familiar with, but then also throwing in your own signature to make it you. Is a good balance. I think the common theme is what you're talking about, GC, is just whatever I feel at that moment, whatever I feel at that moment. But it's a culmination of everything that you experienced prior to that moment. So even though you're saying I'm making whatever I feel at that moment, yeah, but you've been listening to music for the last 30 years, 20, how old you are, but you've been listening to music, you're influenced by, your immigrant parents that we were talking about, right? Influenced by your immigrant parents and their country's music. We're talking about how you used to listen to music from Hong Kong and folk music and things like that. Touch a little bit on that, man. Like, because I think a lot of people are fucking uncultured, man. They gotta like go back and they gotta check out other countries' music because there's some sick shit out there, man. Yeah. And how's that music kind of influenced you?
Well, with this sort of like ethnic music, I think more and more producers are finding like crate digging and especially old Japanese samples, and they use that as melodies in their beats and just put like trap drums over, and it sounds fire. Yeah, I grew up with Cantonese music, But remember the story I was telling you about with my dad
Yeah.
dropping me off at school?
Yeah.
So I'll just let everyone in the room know. Basically, every morning he'd take me to school. And as soon as we get to the gate of the school, he'd turn up the cassette playing like this really loud, like Chinese, like local, like folk singer from like some obscure village in China. And like, it would sound really like, I don't know. It was really embarrassing for me at the time. But like, he'd do it as soon as I'd open the door, and he'd be like, he'd just look at me and just be like, I'm like, why do you have to do that? But yeah, but looking back now, I actually appreciate that type of music. You know, it's interesting to hear how different melodies and or even like geographical location plays a big part in music.
Yeah,
you can get influence from everywhere, anywhere, and everywhere, and it's important that you keep an open mind and just keep on discovering music from all different locations.
For sure, man. There's beautiful music everywhere. Different instruments, different kind of like chord progressions and patterns of how you know how music is made in different places around the world. They have different scales.
Yeah, exactly.
Different scales that you can implement that are like, oh shit, that's totally different. Like we know like tapping into different cultures and merging that and you know fusing that with modern music has always been super cool. I think.
You never know what comes next. Like what can, you know, things that people haven't heard before could be like on the charts, and like it could be make it in the club, and you know, it'll be like the next big sound.
Yeah.
So
do you do a lot of collaboration in person, like with other producers, or virtually even, or like do you do a lot of collabs or no?
I don't mind doing I do collabs. I don't mind doing them online. I don't like working with other people in terms of like going to the studio.
Right.
I've been to a couple of studio sessions, but they just weren't they weren't for me.
Why you think?
I work very independently. I like to have total like artistic license and creative control over what I'm making. But it's not that I don't value the opinions of others. You know, I highly value what other people can bring to the table when it's like true collaboration between me and another producer.
Right.
But when it comes to, say, being in the studio, I've dealt with egos a lot, and sometimes your presence would be taken as a threat not a threat, but you'd be like, there would be a lot of hostility, especially if it's like someone else's studio, or it's like some guy that has, you know, he's, you know, quite accomplished.
Right.
Sometimes your presence could be taken as
you
know, a threat, or like you'd be just seen as like some sort of outsider. And I don't really deal well with that kind of energy, you know.
It depends. It depends on the collaborator, right? It just depends on the artist or the producer that you're working with. You know, I don't think everyone, you know, is gonna feel threatened. Like really, really great musicians, if they recognize another great musician, like they're gonna want to open up to that person. You know,
it's more like, it's not like that I'm a threat to them. It's like, you know, I don't know you, but like I've got all these like accolades under my belt. So you take a backseat and just like
you should walk around with your PayPal statement on your head like this.
Oh no.
Really be mad.
I'm pretty sure they'll shut up. But I mean, it could be intimidating to be in the studio, and then like having to create on the spot sometimes too is kind of weird. It's kind of weird sometimes, but someone, let's bring up, you know, a collaborator that you've worked with a lot recently is Coda the Friend, right? You've made a shit ton of music with him, and mostly just sending beats to him, right?
Yeah, it's so I think he just found me on YouTube, and I believe he got in contact with you, and that's when we sent beats over for his one of his lyrics to go EPs. But I'd say he'd be one of my main collaborators as an artist. I love working with him. He's very, very independent. Well, he's not signed to a label or anything, so he knows exactly what he wants. But he's a guy that just makes content consistently, and found that my beats were a perfect fit for his EPs at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a total misconception, I think, like in the industry where, like you said, oh, you have to lock in the studio with this artist. This is the best way to make music. I don't fucking believe so. I don't believe so at all, actually. I don't believe so at all. And I'll give you proof. I was just at Austin City Limits at this the biggest music festival in Austin, in America. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing David, D4VD, you know, David, who has the hit songs Romantic Homicide and Here With Me, right? Mm-hmm. Like massive hit songs, Billboard hits, right? Mm-hmm. Crazy hit Billboard hits that he bought on BeatStars from Dan Dameron. Now, I'm sitting there throughout his whole set, and not to knock the other producers he's been locking in with or like the sessions he's been with, you know, with the majors. I mean, it's all great music, but nothing compared to his whole catalog of performances than those 2 hits that he found beats online with, mm-hmm. that he discovered and downloaded and, you know, created those hits in solitude. I really don't believe that you are more likely to make a hit in the studio than just crate digging on BeatStars, finding a vibe or piece of music that you resonate with, that you're feeling at that moment. This is a story you want to tell at that moment, mm-hmm. right? And releasing that at that moment. I don't think you can accelerate that process. You know mm-hmm. what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like if I'm locked in with one producer and I'm stuck to that one producer's like vision of how I should sound, and I have to kind of conform my artistry as a recording artist to that one producer. I mean, you may make some great music. You know, sure, there's been hits made that way, but you know, in today's world with the amount of catalog of music that's discoverable, I think the probability of making something bigger that'll resonate even stronger would be doing it online, to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah,
you know?
So, yeah.
And I would just add to that too, speaking on that, those songs, are they at like 1 billion plus streams for those 2 songs? Yeah. I worked on those deals, and it goes back to catalog, right? When we think about owning catalog, like we talked about earlier, and having leverage, it's amazing when you can see a producer and you can just meet a producer and work with them and talk to them. And people don't realize that that producer owns those beats, right? So they didn't have to do a work for hire deal for those 2 beats with 1.4 billion streams. Mm-hmm. What they did was, and I shouldn't be giving out the game, but something that BeatStars Publishing and BeatStars has pioneered, the non-exclusive sample, right? So allowing a producer to say, yeah, I don't want to sell my beat to you because it's doing this. He's another one. I don't make 1,000 beats, right? I make it's quality over quantity. I make what I like, but I don't want to sell, you know, not my soul, but all my rights to you. This is what I want to do. And then using that leverage to turn around and have another deal with a song that I think went #1 on Spotify and do that one non-exclusively, and having a fixed option, right, to say I'll sell it to you, work for hire at this price if I feel like it. And I think the online game has really unlocked a lot of the leverage mm-hmm. for a lot of producers. And if I was a young creator, knowing what I know, I probably would have tried to be a producer, because you have so much leverage when you build that catalog, mm-hmm. when you know what's going on, when you understand finance, and you kind of stick to what you enjoy. And I think, like you said, Abe, the online thing is it's truly amazing. Some of the stories. It's liberating, man, for real. Not just because I made it. It's just, you know, the nature of the game. And it was going to be done, you know, it was going to happen. And the online community of collaboration just continues to grow and grow. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, every week we're seeing new Billboard hits coming from off the platform into the hits for the community. I'm so fucking excited, man. It's just like great. It's like the dream that we had when we started.
That was your goal as a visionary.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was like, man, we're going to unlock this shit.
Yeah.
We're going to break the whole system. Mm. You know what I'm saying? Give all the producers all the leverage, you know? Mm-hmm. Like we really, when Kyle says, you know, there's a lot of behind the scenes things that we do that have been done throughout the years that a lot of producers don't know. Like producers, when they used to sign a publishing deal, they used to sign long-term They used to sign. So even their online sales were taken by the publishers back in the day. Like they were signing everything over to a publisher. And we were the first like company to kind of force the publishers to carve out, you know, online licensing revenue from publishing deals. So producers can continue to maintain and build their own independent business without everybody all up in their pockets and shit.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So to me, that was like a big win. That was a big win. Changed the game. But man, back to like, you know, when I first started the podcast, I said you're one of the top selling in the world ever in the history of the internet. You know,
right?
Like
I don't know what to say when you say that sometimes. Yeah,
straight out of Liverpool.
I always just say I got lucky. Yeah.
Man, shut up, man. Shut up. Got lucky. Nah, man. Like you were blessed. You were blessed, man. You were one of the ones that got touched with the ability to have a brain to put it all together and create this magic and this for millions of other artists to like express themselves, man. It's like such a blessing. You know, would you be willing to kind of share what you've done throughout your career in terms of revenues? Yeah. Yeah.
So I remember saying to you, like, because I'm off, I don't know if we're going to touch on this topic, but I was off social media. I don't share a lot on social media.
Yeah.
I'm quite private with, you know, what's going on with my career and my personal life. But for reasons being that I have a lot of family and friends. Friends, I don't mind seeing, you know, my, you know, parts of my life from time to time, but like there's a lot of, I don't know, it's just something about, and I'm not knocking my family, it's just like there's certain people that it's, you know, private information.
You're about to get some loan requests after this.
Man. Yeah, but now that I really don't mind sharing kind of like the metrics and the numbers. I think beat sales from licensing, publishing, so wait, on DistroKid, what are those?
No, master royalties,
master royalties, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of songs that I have 50% on, which I shouldn't really have 50%. I think the artist's manager is quite annoyed at that fact. But yeah, those.
I want to touch on that topic after though, but go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Sales from before I went full time making beats on BeatStars, I think we're touching on about $2 million.
Amazing, man. It's crazy. Damn, dog, you make more money than me. That's amazing.
Let me hold some now.
Congrats, man.
Congrats.
Thanks.
The only reason why I even like bring that up, it's just you get so many people that have like, you know, a misconception. Like, oh, man, you're selling your beats for $30 a license online. You're devaluing the game. But I'm pretty sure some of those beats alone have generated 6 figures. You know, some of those beats by themselves have, right?
Yeah, and publishing's really added to that as well. So ever since we've done the Sony and BeatStars publishing partnership, that's unlocked another stream of income.
Yeah, that's going to continue to grow.
Yeah,
we have plans to like even unlock that even more for producers. So that's going to probably eventually turn into one of your big primary revenue streams at some point within the next 12 to 24 months. You know,
definitely a keeper. Yeah.
That's great, man. Thank you for sharing that. It's really inspiring. You know, congrats on all of that success. And I think for any young creator how old are you?
30, going on to 32.
Yeah, man, you're still young, man. Still young. And
I don't feel it.
Man, I didn't pay my first paycheck at BeatStars till I was like 35, maybe 36. Oh, wow. So just to show you how ahead of the game you are in building your own business and being a solo entrepreneur and not having to rely on employees or contractors or anyone to help you grow and scale your business, you're able to do it alone in your own comfort of your home and at your own creative pace is, man, it's a blessing. It's a blessing.
It really is.
Yeah. Where do you think this is all going next, man? Like, where do you, I know you say you're taking a little break. I saw you yeah, I remember you posting something about like taking a break, and I remember I had to message you. I'm like, GC, man, I'm telling you, man, not a lot of people get this opportunity. Not a lot of people, not a lot. I mean, people would kill to be in your position, and you know, hopefully you overcome whatever it is that, you know, you're going through personally, and I'll pray for that, and I pray that you will, you know, have some sort of new spark of creativity, that because your music is so damn important to these kids, man, to these people that just like are writing their life stories on your beats. Like I hate to say it to you, like big bro, you're kind of robbing these kids of being able to express themselves right now. So you owe it to the community, and I hope we get you back soon, going hard and full time. And I can't wait to hear like the next shit that you come out with. So
yeah, we'll see what I can come up with. I think I've only just got back into the swing of things.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to put out some new work.
Oh yeah, man. Any kind of like last words for, you know, for the community, for the people that follow you?
It's been a great journey on BeatStars. It's been really fun, just meeting all these producers and artists, and yeah, to everyone, just keep up what you're doing. Let's collaborate more. Let's talk more. Let's share our experiences more, and same with artists as well. Let's all keep going.
Kyle?
I just, again, giving you your flowers, man. You really, really inspire not only, you know, other creators, but people like myself, you know, because it's like when you got a heavy hitter, you got to make sure you're on your A game. So, you know, I would just say, you know, that number he just said, let that be a lesson to everyone watching this, that as a creator, having ownership, having catalog, having masters, having publishing, all of those things are very important, so you can, you know, build a nice life for yourself. And yeah, man, just excited for you and the next parts of your journey, and always here to, you know, help you and be a part of that.
Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
You're inspiring the whole generation, bro. We're so thankful to you to be having us be part of your journey and, you know, be part of this community. You're a motherfucking legend, dog. You motherfucking legend, GC.
Appreciate it. You too, Abe. And feelings mutual.
Yes, sir. And yeah, I can't wait to see what else you got cooking up. This is just, I feel like you're just getting started.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do, how far we can take it. Sky's the limit.
Well, that's a wrap for Pay the Creators episode in Amsterdam, part 2 at 80E with GC Beats. I thank you everyone for tuning in. Make sure you motherfucking subscribe to the channel, please, and keep this thing going so we can keep sharing these amazing stories. Big shout out to Kyle and Lee earlier for you being my co-host. They auditioned. I think they did a pretty good job. We might need to keep them around. All right, appreciate y'all. Peace.
Peace.
So